What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Next Gen Pod. With you guys, it's your host, Arnie Mana, and Joe Tipton and Jamie Shaw of On3/Rivals. Hopefully my voice doesn't sound horrible today, guys. Allergies in Texas is bad. I was actually coaching a little bit last night. For people that don't know, I used to coach for like 8 seasons in like the prep level in Texas. Retired. They kind of try to bring me back out of retirement a little bit for senior night. Guys, there's a reason I stopped coaching. It takes too much of my time. But anyways, I'll be drinking water throughout this pod, so I don't sound completely crusty. But anyway, Joe, Jamie, how y'all feeling?
Doing good.
You're an old man, already retired and everything, man.
Retired and everything, man. Coaching taught me a lot of good things, but it also told me that I need to get out of it. You know what I mean? Like, I can't do a pod today. My voice is gone, but we're gonna get to it. I'm gonna thug it out. We're gonna get to it. So the first topic today, and it's gonna be really the main topic, is the number one draft pick convo. Obviously, throughout the whole season, it's kind of been a AJ, Darryn Peterson, Cam Boozer. I think guys that have been playing really well may not be in the number one convo, but have really gotten into that top 5 convo, like Caleb Wilson, Keen Waggler, right? I guess I'm saying it right, and Kingston Flemings. Jamie, want to get your take on the number one. I know we talked in our group text a lot, but want to get your take on who's currently number one in your 2026 NBA draft.
This hasn't changed for me. He was number one throughout high school. He was number one coming into this season. AJ Dybantsa is number one guy. I think he's showing through this year all the stuff that we've seen from him in high school previously. Obviously, you see the prototypical size, the positional length that's kind of coveted at the highest levels. You see the versatility that he brings with that, the shot creation that he also has, the unique nature of his ability to kind of manufacture points and be able to score the basketball in that way. He's been number one for me this entire time throughout, and I haven't gotten off of that yet.
Joe, what's your feel?
Yeah, for me, it's wavered. Like I had AJ at 1 for quite a while, and then just watching some of Darren's games, earlier in the season and being at the Kansas BYU game and kind of what he did in the first half really opened my eyes. So I started to lean more towards DP, but just kind of as time has went on, and maybe it's not entirely his fault, but because I know there's outside influences and that sort of thing, but just like the lack of consistent playing time. And I'm sure especially in the early games, you can tell he's not like his full self, and the hamstring was bothering him and those sort of things. And I get that. I'm not trying to, act like injuries aren't a real thing, but at the same time, it's like, there's some games you watch, there's no sign of anything necessarily holding him back, but then he'll just sit the second half. So for me, and maybe it's just how, their camp has handled it, the PR, all of it has not been great. It is not, the optics of this have been very poor with DP. So when I, take that into consideration, just his lack of durability, I'm not questioning his love or love for the game or anything like that, but it does bring questions for me. So for me, it makes it more of an easier decision for it to be AJ Dybantsa as number 1 overall pick, just because he doesn't have those same issues that DP has.
I had Darryn Peterson early on. I'm still a really big fan of Darryn Peterson, to be honest with you. He's not moving the way he did when we saw in high school, or even in some of the games throughout the season. The hamstring injury is real. I think it's unfair kind of what people are kind of labeling him as, even though he's playing through injury. But to your point, Joe, I do feel like there should have been more dialogue, especially transparency of what's going on early. And then especially, some of the comments that Bill Self has made that was hey, I thought he was going to, play the whole game, and I don't know why not, stuff like that going on makes it really look strange. And then because, even before the season started, Bill Self was telling people, this may be the best player he's ever coached, as far as talent. So I believe in the talent, Darryn Peterson, but why I'm putting AJ 1 is more so what he's been doing. the passing, like the playmaking. I know BYU is really at best when he's playing on the ball and his decision making. Like the Iowa State game was fantastic to me. Just the way he was scoring it. We seen him score all season, but that playmaking and the ability just to lead and how he was like manipulating the defense was super impressive. I know the UCF game, I know he still had like 29 and 8. And he did it. No one on BYU looked good that game. I mean, that was just one of those games that was just awful. But I've been really impressed with his playmaking, stepping up since Richie Saunders is out. The playmaking combined with the scoring and even his 3-point shooting, he's getting more comfortable, getting his feet set, rising up and shooting. I'm gonna have AJ one, but I'm not falling off completely on Darryn Peterson like some have. I do think some of the stuff on the mainstream media is more like clickbait, more trying to get views. This kid is playing through a hamstring injury. If anyone's ever tried to play through a hamstring injury, that is very painful. Just from personal experience. But I do think, to your point, Joe, there should have been more dialogue. There should have been more, like, now they're trying to talk, like him and Cam trying to talk. They should have done that earlier.
Why didn't they talk earlier is my question. Like, do y'all have a theory or like, because for me, I don't understand. Like, I would have wanted to get ahead of this. Maybe it's just like lack of experience they didn't know he was going to be like under a microscope, but then also at the same time, you're the projected #1 overall pick and you're at Kansas and your name is Darryn Peterson. So I just don't know why they didn't get ahead of it.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I definitely felt like they should have. I mean, to me, Darryn Peterson, and even I'll let Jamie kind of talk about this more about, like, even in high school, there have been times where he's missed games, where he's kind of missed some stretches because of injury. I think the intel on Darryn, I've said this in the past, is great. Every coach that's coached him have had such high regard on his character, his work ethic. So I don't think that's going to be a problem even in the NBA. It's just going to be, what does the medicals look like? Do you feel like he's someone that could play 65 plus games every season? Because I know, like, he's not getting a lot of assists, but if you look at his high school tape, there's stuff they're like he can make those reads. In Kansas, he's asked to be a scorer. He's asked to score. Then there was a stat about like some of his guys, like that Bill Self's had, like the most someone's average is like 3 assists that played off the ball. Like, I think Darryn has that in him. I think the playmaking is going to get better in the league. My thing is does the medicals check out? Is he someone you feel like can play 65 plus games in a season? If you feel that way, you're confident, you believe in the ability, then he's a #1 draft pick. But I think AJ, how he's progressed throughout the season, which I don't think gets talked about enough, is how much better he's getting as a player, especially someone with the ball in his hands. That's why I have him 1 over Darryn Peterson.
Looking back through, so my first time watching AJ was his 8th grade year going into 9th grade. And then watching him all the way throughout high school situations, USA basketball situations, elite camp type situations and all that. Lots of viewings of AJ throughout the last 4 or 5 year period coming up. And he always showed these type of flashes. He was always able to adapt to the setting that he was in, whether it be the primary scorer, the guy that finished plays, whether it be the leader of the team, whether it be a guy who facilitates and playmakes. You watch him with USA basketball, when you're in the training camp, those closed training camp sessions, he was the loudest voice in the room. He was the one who every single person on the team had the eyeballs on. And he was the one competing, diving on the floor for loose balls, doing all that stuff. And he also, throughout his 3 FIBA USA basketball, averaged over 3 assists per game throughout those 3 16U, 17U, and 19U, I believe, FIBA events. He's had the flashes of all of this stuff throughout his entire time coming up, and the competitive nature and all that. Now what we're seeing here is he has to talk about adapting to the situation. He has to be the guy. He has to have the ball in his hands because BYU's been hit by injuries. There wasn't a lot of depth on that roster to begin with. Now injuries are happening, and the depth goes less and less and less. So they're putting the ball in their best players' hands, and it seems that him and Kevin Young kind of have a very nice rapport with one another, where they're understanding as to how to get AJ in his spots. And as you said, he's learning that. He's streamlining his game, getting it into advantageous situations, both for himself and his team. It seems like the game, for being the best player in college basketball, the best, most talented player coming in and all that, it seems like the game's even slowing down more for him at this point in time. I think coming into before last night's game, he had 7 or more assists in 3 of the previous 4. I think in the previous 10 games that he played coming into last night's game, obviously last night not included, it would go up 28.1 points per game. So he's got a high usage rate when this is happening. But not only that, he's answering the call and making the plays not only for himself but for his team as well. The very first time I watched him, throughout the first couple times when he is still in school in Massachusetts and going to Prolific, his mid-range footwork, mid-post footwork was unbelievable. You watched him play and you saw a lot of stuff that's like, man, that's like some Jason Tatum type stuff when it came to the mid-post, his ability to create open space within a phone booth from the elbows, going to work in the mid-post area and all that. Then he expanded his game as opposed to just settling for those 2 dribble pull-ups and the Carmelo Anthony type mid-range stuff. You saw him play for the Oakland Soldiers and were violently getting downhill. He was, one move downhill to the rim, finishing at the basket with a purpose. Adding that to the game, now you're seeing all of that come together. And I said USA basketball, a facilitating type role on ball, or I guess off ball is a secondary type situation. So you're seeing all the flashes in different areas and how he's adapted. Now he's putting it together with a huge spotlight on him. Now he's showing you the ability to score the basketball and be a go-to scorer at over 50% shooting. Now he's showing you the ability, if it's not there, get off the ball and get a teammate open because he knows he's drawing eyeballs. He's got 2 guys on him at all times. Once that second guy comes, pass away from it, get the guy an open look. And his teammates are helping him by making shots now. There's a lot of stuff there when it comes to AJ, and now we're just seeing everything kind of come together. When it comes to Darryn, all of the playing time stuff aside, that's something that went back to high school. There were games that he sat, he did not play for whatever reason. It's his playing situation this year does not come as a surprise. Okay. So to kind of see that and go off of that, playing time aside, I still have questions about Darryn's actual game that he has not answered for me this year. Coming in, the jump shot was something. Now, I will say Darryn's jump shooting is absolutely spectacular. I think that is actually something that's keeping him toward the top of this list. His ability to step into a 3-point jump shot. The shooting has come around. The form has gotten better, and he is a beautiful jump shooter. He's a shot maker, and his ability to score the basketball has really come around because you have to guard up on him now. Previously, when Darryn was playing with Phenom University on the 3SSB circuit and at Prolific Prep, he was a ball-dominant guy on the ball. I'm not going to say he struggled. He needed screens oftentimes to get downhill into the paint. So I had a little bit of questions as to a ball-dominant guy didn't have the burst necessarily to get in the paint. But once he got into the paint and the defense collapsed, if he wasn't scoring or drawing fouls, he struggled with the secondary reads. So in my viewings of him, I saw him a guy who had a flat jump shot at the time. Now that's been answered. Beautiful jump shot. But a guy who kind of struggled with the secondary reads, struggled with the passing stuff, struggled with the ability to set up his teammates. He had no problem collapsing the defense because he would always play in a screen. But he was a ball-dominant guy, dribble. That's the defense, and oftentimes out of that he would draw a foul. He was maybe in the high school level one of the best foul drawers I've seen because he would be getting to the free throw line 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 times a game just from collapsing the defense, going into the contact and getting to the free throw line. And that was the way that he saw the ball go through and continue to score baskets in that way. So those questions for me, especially when it comes to the passing situation, especially when it comes to the the ball sticking in his hands, especially when it comes to that type of stuff and not showing necessarily the burst to get by somebody with the counters. Now he has made some tough shots throughout, but when those tough shots are falling, what we're seeing is that 40% shooting from 2 during the Big 12 play that's happening. So Darryn, for me, the sitting stuff is par for the course. It's what we've seen from him throughout high school. What he's happened this year, not a surprise. The actual questions I have on him come from the game situation, that come from the reads, and we're seeing a less than a negative assist to turnover ratio. We're seeing the low shooting percentages. We're seeing all this type of stuff in the half court, and those are the questions that I kind of have with him. And with the hamstring injuries that he's saying he's had, those are type of things that you just can't, burst is not going to come if you're struggling with a hamstring injury. So, we're going to have to see what happens with that. But that's kind of where it comes for me. AJ's kind of always been there. Now there are some initial burst questions when it comes to getting past his man, but AJ's also shown the counters to be able to still get to secondary shots and all that as well. But yeah, no, AJ's still been number one for me. Darryn has not answered some of the questions that I had of him coming out of high school on the court.
Joe, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with where Jamie's coming from, and definitely see that. I guess my question, like with all the questions around Darryn Peterson, whether it be kind of his, lack of availability, lack of durability, and then some of the questions that like Jamie has specifically about like the on court and maybe where he's limited. Is there any chance that Darryn is still like falls below 2? Like, is he a lock at 2 at the latest in y'all's mind, or is it just depend on like the medical?
I mean, it just I can't. I mean, for me, he's still a lock at 2. I mean, the talent is there. Like, if you even look at the high school, to me, when it comes to reads, and we've seen this from guys, even I think his role in Kansas is a lot different than AJ's role in BYU. Darryn Peterson, I think when it comes to guys making reads, I think that's something developed over time. I still think that's something developed over time, and we've seen that out of prospects that get to the league. They get better at it. So I agree with Jamie on that. I'm looking at it more. AJ has really gotten to the point where he's really, really making those reads. That game is slowing down. I give more credit for AJ's role at BYU and how he's allowed to kind of continue to make those mistakes and be in a position where he can grow. Like, yeah, we saw it at FIBA. We saw some in high school, but he's allowed to really like learn and grow, like go through those mistakes and playing on the ball a lot and making those reads in the game slowing down. So like I just love the position that like he's in at BYU. I mean, I know they're not playing very good right now, but like it has helped him develop tremendously in my opinion. And because of what AJ's doing right now, honestly, that's why I haven't won. You can argue Cam Boozer at 2. I mean, look how great he's been, his feel for the game. I know people have the vertical athletic concerns, but like what Cam's done is fantastic. For me, I believe in the talent. I know Darryn Peterson's been hurt. Like I said, hamstring injuries are nothing to play with. And I think he'll get better over time. I think the question is, if you don't draft him at 2, you don't feel like he can play at least 65 plus games for consecutive seasons. It's more of to me, it's more of a health thing than it would be a talent. For me, I believe in the talent, so I draft him 2. If you think it's something otherwise, maybe that's what a GM would probably feel like. They're not going to be able to get him. Like, they're not going to have him for 65 plus games. Because the best ability is availability at the end of the day. So I believe the injury is real, but you still got to be available. Like, when you talk about 1 through 3, those draft picks, even like those top 5 draft picks, you're getting someone that may not be a franchise guy, but he's he's part of the building blocks of your franchise contending for a potential title one day. So you want to make sure that they're available.
The one that I'm going to be fascinated to see as to what happens with him is Caleb Wilson. Caleb Wilson, for me, I think has so much stuff. He's shown so much this year, and I think he's still got some left in the tank that we have not necessarily seen. We've seen Caleb be so good at attacking the front of the rim when he played. Like, I think before he got injured, leading the country in dunks and all that. He has not played away from the basket very much. When he was in high school, he was almost strictly away from the basket, facing up, getting downhill off the bounce. He showed not only initial moves, but he showed counters off of the go-to as well off the bounce. Now, he hasn't shown that at UNC because he's been so good around the basket. I'm going to be fascinated to see because I think he's actually truly somebody that NBA spacing could help. When he comes to that next level at 6'10", the ability, the quickness, the twitch to be able to get downhill, attack, attack space and make a play off the bounce, facing up, in space. When you also add in the two-way factor that he brings, the ability to defend multiple spots on the floor, the ability to slide his feet on the perimeter guy, switch down, weak side rim protection, guarding on the block, and then his frame's going to continue to fill out that he has with that twitch and pop. Also, the long arms, the length, and the coveted size. I think there's a lot of versatility that he brings there. In the archetype, in the baseline archetype, now I think there's also variance that could happen And it's obviously not a one-to-one situation, but the baseline archetype of a Jaden McDaniels type of player, as to how valuable that is at the highest levels of basketball when it comes to, if you believe in the defense like that, the versatility when it comes to somebody like that. If I feel like everybody wants that. We saw a couple years ago, Pat Williams went in the top 5 for the Bulls because they thought that archetype, the value that that archetype has. Now, obviously, Pat Williams, that's probably a bad name to bring up when you're talking about a top 5 guy because he hasn't panned out to that level. But that's more so to show the value of what that archetype brings. Of the NBA teams want somebody like that that can play that role and fit in that role. It's just that Caleb Wilson brings more to that. You see the efficiency that he's had in the scoring stuff, but I think going even dating back to high school, when he had the ball in his hands, he was able to create opportunities off the bounce, facing up away from the basket, and consistently do that. He hasn't shown that necessarily at UNC, and that's something that's going on. A lot of these people that we see that are cluttering the conversation here are just seeing these guys possibly at like an all-star event and then in college. They're not in the weeds watching these players throughout high school summers, throughout high school seasons with their high school team. A random January game. They're just not seeing all this kind of stuff for the first time, not having seen what they're capable of in the past. Seeing what Caleb Wilson playing with his Holy Innocents team out of Georgia, you saw a lot of stuff off the bounce. You saw the development of counters. Getting the spacing is going to be big for him when it comes to the offensive end of the floor. But I'm going to be fascinated to see when he comes back from his injury, what that looks like. I'm going to be fascinated to see when he comes back from his injury, how long that UNC team can sustain a run for and get more spotlight on him. Because, just like all these guys, they're going to be really good in the interviews. Caleb's going to be great in his NBA interviews. I think he's going to be really good when it comes to his workouts and all that type of stuff too. I can see a real situation for Caleb Wilson skyrockets when it comes to that. And that's not even mentioning Cam Boozer. I've talked for about 6 minutes here, so I'll let y'all go ahead and go something. But I'll hop in on Cam Boozer here in a second.
Ani, this is the Jamie Shaw pod. We'll just log out and let Jamie talk to himself.
Listen, we know Jamie get going. Jamie, we keep letting you.
Jamie loves hoop. That's for sure.
You're passionate about it. No, Caleb Wilson to me, like, I don't know if it's a one-on-one comparison with him and Jaden McDaniels, but I just think, like, even when you look at him in the summer team, it was Night Riders, right, with Cam Boozer, and them, like, how he played a complementary role and how they won. Like, I think, like, he is, like, maybe he's not your number one option, like, on an NBA team, like, if you're really trying to contend. Maybe he is, maybe we don't know. Like, for me, with guys of that talent, like some of these guys are talking about in the top 4, I don't like to put like just a strict ceiling on them because, you just never know with the development. You don't know if he's done growing or anything. Like, we've seen a lot of this stuff going on in the league, but we know one thing, what he brings to the table on the defensive end, even offensively. I know a lot of it's interior, and I think even with the playmaking, there's some levels as a playmaker I think he can unlock. I think I agree with you, even from that perimeter shooting, that I think he'll get there over time. I'm really intrigued with Caleb Wilson's like NBA upside, and I'm not putting a ceiling on him. Like, I think he's someone that, to your point, even though he's like in that 4 range, like he could be someone that gets drafted too. You know what I'm saying? Like, before he got hurt, he was playing really, really good, better than, just as good as anybody in the country. So I think Caleb Wilson really has.
Also, too, you have to take into account he's been on the floor this year with AJ Dybantsa, with Darryn Peterson, with Cam Boozer, and in the individual matchups of each of those games, Caleb Wilson was the better player on the floor that night.
Exactly. And that's why I'm like, he's played just as good as any of those guys, especially when matched up against them and just overall in the season. So I think Caleb Wilson has a real shot at being at number 2. And I think just his NBA fit, it's as clear as day. But I also like one person I like, and I've told y'all this on the group thread, like Keenan Waggler. I like big guards that can, even though he, like, again, people talk about the athleticism, but he can dance with that ball. He can create his own shot. He can play on and off the ball. The playmaking's gotten better. Like, I like how he's being utilized in Illinois, to be honest with you. Maybe he doesn't get drafted top 3, but guys like him, I'm very interested in how he is in the NBA, because I think he's going to be really, really good. I think he has all-star potential. Big guard that can play on and off, can create his own shot and create for others. They generally have a really, really long career. So he's someone I just feel like if he hits another tier in conference tournament, NCAA tournament, they make a run. He's someone that's going to be in those top 2 to 3 conversations.
Yeah, he's one of those guys for me. Again, not a one for one, but there's kind of variance here, possibility. But in the archetype, in the linear archetype of a Devin Booker type of guy, as to where you see the offensive stuff, and I think he is at his best. Illinois is at his best when he's playing in a secondary complementary type of role. He's the first pass off the ball. You run some stuff through him and stuff, but not necessarily the guy that brings the ball across half court. The shooting stuff has popped the entire season. As you said, his own ball creation has been super intriguing. You know, when he's off the ball, he's not tasked to blow by a guy and make a play. He's catching the ball on reversals, and he's catching the ball playing off of a collapsed defense whenever Kylan Boswell or whomever it is gets in it. A lot of his assists, the assist totals are high, but a lot of those things are just kickouts and pitch rounds to possibly shooters and all that too. So I'm not entirely sure how in depth or so his passing ability is, outside of just making the right basketball play. And then there's definite defensive questions with him, which is kind of also what spurs that, kind of lineage or archetype of a Devin Booker type of situation. But him adding weight and continuing to grow as a player, I think there's a lot of intrigue there when it comes to a complimentary guy, um, who can run, your second team offense, but as well as, space the floor as a shooter and get into the mid range and make some plays as a scorer. Um, there as well. I'm not sure if he's the upside to be as dynamic of a scorer as Devin Booker, but I think that secondary type of role, complementary type of role, is a combo two guy who can have some passing chops, passing designations. It's very interesting with Waggler.
And you do
Yeah.
see how valuable like scoring, shooting, shot making is in the NBA, and he
Right.
has that ability to, a lot of the time you're going to need to, run stuff for him, and he can create his own shot as well. But just what he can bring in, the untapped potential that he has long term, just on the shot making and playmaking alone is pretty high in my opinion.
Yeah, Joe, we haven't talked a whole lot about Cam Boozer, but I want you to get your take. I mean, Cam Boozer has been on some people's number one on the draft boards. What's your thoughts on that? I know we've all, for consensus, we said AJ, but can you see why people are saying Cam Boozer being number one in this year's draft?
Yeah, without question. I just think it's, you know, his level of impact has translated from high school to college, and I think it'll continue to translate, towards the NBA. And I know people, have had questions about like how does it match up against players of his similar size and caliber. And I think it was a good test against when Duke played Michigan the other night when he's going up against two other NBA players, or excuse me, three, when Yaxel Ademara and Marez Johnson, and he still was pretty effective. 18 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. So he can hang with the best of them. You know what I mean? There's always going to be those questions around his athleticism, burst, foot speed, those sort of things. But then also you just factor in like his work ethic and just overall understanding and how cerebral he is, and then the passing that he can, like we've talked about, like Duke can run the offense through him and he can facilitate things and make things happen with the ball in his hands. So I really like him. I think like he's obviously, at least for me, and I'm sure y'all would agree, still below, DP, AJ, and maybe even Caleb Wilson. I think that's where it gets a little bit more iffy. But I love Cam Boozer, and I think he's going to be, a 15-year pro.
My thing with Cam, two things with Cam. One of them that seen for a while. One of them I've really grown into my thought process this year. The first one being is what you're going to get with Cam Boozer. You just every single time. My first time, much like AJ, my first time seeing Cam, he was in 8th grade. Watched him all the way throughout high school, all throughout the multiple FIBA gold medals, the Peach Jam championships, high school play at Columbus. You know what you're gonna get from him. He's gonna go to work. He's gonna compete. He's gonna bring the physicality and all that. What I've grown into this year with Cam Boozer is the unique nature of his IQ and feel. I feel like he's super unique in a player that initiates, that wants the physicality and contact, but he's also somebody who is a high level processor. Somebody you could run an entire offense through. And I think what we're really seeing this year at Duke, especially Carter and I were talking about this earlier, is John Shire is really able to kind of get into his bag when it comes to offensive play calls because he has somebody like a Cam Boozer that you can run inverse type offenses through and still be able to really find different spacings and different cutting abilities and different angles to be able to attack the basket and everything. I think Cam Boozer's processing and feel for the game is such a unique um, attribute that he brings. I think the floor with him is super high, which is why somebody I can see him possibly going higher. You know, right now I think he's number 4 on my board. Caleb number 3, then Darryn and AJ. I can see him definitely going higher because there's a comfort level that you have in taking that pick. You're not going to look at yourself 2 years down the road and be like, dang, I took Cam Boozer. I can't believe that. You're going to be excited about the fact that Cam Boozer is going to be there. He's going to produce probably pretty quickly, and he's going to have a sustained career. While the ceiling might be a little bit capped because of the athletic stuff, because of the finishes at the rim, because of the guarding on an island and moving his feet laterally, it might be capped in that aspect. But he's also going to probably produce, and there's some very interesting things you can do with him putting the ball in his hands and his ability to consistently make a play. But then also you have his understanding of leverage and angles and how to go get the ball after a miss, go get the ball on the rebound and finish the second one. He does that so much, especially when he's playing against the bigger people. You saw it against Michigan a lot, missed the initial layup and everything, but he would knock the guy so far off balance, whether it be a Day or Morales or whomever it is. He just got there for an easy layup for the secondary rebound and stuff. He's a high IQ player. He's unique in that manner, and there's a comfort level there. There's a high floor comfort level there that you have with Cam Boozer, to where you kind of know what you're going to get from him. And he's one of those guys as to where you're just not going to be disappointed in the pick. Now, other guys might outplay him. Other guys might have MVP type of ceilings and all this type of stuff. But I just don't foresee Cam Boozer in his 10, 12-year career ever being a disappointment. No matter if you take him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wherever it is, I just don't see anybody ever being mad or disappointed in the fact that you took Cam Boozer wherever you take him at, because I just think the floor is just super high with him.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Cam Boozer, we've seen in high school how he's always impacted winning, how he's won. He's won so much, and how he's winning at Duke. I think you're getting a winner in the NBA level. I've said this before, and I feel like where he goes, how you utilize him on the NBA team is going to be very important. If you maybe you don't view him as an MVP caliber player, but I do think if you're going to get the most out of him, it's going to have to be like an offensive hub for your team. Now, I think you can plug and play him in a lot of in multiple places. He's going to figure out how to be productive and win. But I do feel like if you're going to get like a multi-year all-star guy, if you're going to get someone that can be like an all NBA first or second, I'm just saying if that's where you view him, how you utilize him on the court, kind of like how Duke is, and having him be an offensive hub is going to be important. I think that's where, because then you're getting like his feel skill. You're going to see him like, that's where he'll be like someone that could potentially get triple doubles and stuff like that in the league. I do feel like you just kind of put him in a place and he just kind of play a complimentary role. He's going to be fine. He's still going to be really good, to your point, Jamie. But then I think other guys are just going to have like better seasons, right?
For sure.
Because of how they're being used. And I feel like with Cam, I do feel like how you use him, you can potentially get that out of him if you believe in it. But safe pick, maybe not a sexy pick, but it's a safe pick. I think he's going to have a really good career where you place him. But I think if you want him to kind of go, you try to get him to another level of ceiling, like a higher ceiling, then I do feel like you got to have to play through him.
And I think too, he kind of fits the mold as to the shift as to where the NBA is kind of going. You know, in these previous years, we've seen a whole bunch of like shooting, spacing. Now I feel like the Celtics going into the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think that they're looking at putting 5 guys on the floor who could make a decision with the ball in their hand. I think Cam Boozer kind of fits that mold of a player who brings the physicality, but also can make a decision with the ball in his hands. That you trust to be able to do that. And I feel like that's kind of a movement as to where the NBA is kind of going these days, is having guys across the floor like that. And I think Cam Boozer fits that to a T.
So,
Good question.
well, Kingston Flemings, we haven't talked much about him. We talked about him a decent amount in our pod. I know none of us have him as like probably a top 3 pick, and I know he struggled. He struggled a little bit lately the past game or two, but he's someone that's very intriguing. as far as like NBA upside, someone that's so fast. His mid-range shooting's on point. His three-point shooting's gotten better, especially since high school, where that was the concern, and we're seeing improvements there. So Joe, just give your thoughts on Kingston Flemings. He's someone that people thought wasn't going to be a one and done, at first. Maybe he needed another year. I think we all felt like he was going to be a one and done, especially if you saw him like his senior in high school and his junior going to his senior high school. He was incredible. But now he's listed in that top 5 discussion. Just talk about Kingston, his impact, and where you can see him down the road in the NBA.
Yeah, I think, and even the Houston staff didn't really fully realize that he was going to be a one and done player. I think they probably recruited him to play behind Milos Uzan, if I'm not mistaken. But, he's been fantastic this season. I know he's, not necessarily struggled a little bit as of late, but didn't necessarily, hasn't been, as hot as he was. I think he was shooting like almost like 45% from 3 at some point. His numbers have dipped a little bit, but overall, I still think he's been really, really good, especially for a freshman competing in the Big 12. And what I love about him is that he opens up the floor. He can get into the lane whenever he wants. He's so tough and physical and plays hard, defends it at an incredibly high level. He can score it, from a variety of ways, and also, play make and facilitate and kind of control the offense. And he's athletic. So for me, he's the total package. And I could see him. And then I think he's also just a super high character kid. Like, I think there's no red flags there, those sort of things. So I think top 5 is very achievable. Kind of the 5, 5 or 6 is kind of the range that I think I would have him in.
Yeah, one thing about Kingston I do like, and I feel like why he's gotten better and better is his dad has always put him in positions where he had to struggle and figure it out. He was never the one. I'm not saying the other guys haven't, but just seeing him throughout the years, like when he struggled, he just had to figure it out. It wasn't, hey, I'm going to pull him out and go here because it's easier. So I think Kingston,
It's great for Houston too, than being
yeah,
coached by.
yeah, by Coach Sampson, as you see, he embraced it when I was going to summer workouts. I mean, Coach Sampson, he does. He'll play freshmen, but he's very, he's very, very hard on them, right? And so some practices it was really rough for him, but how he just kind of stuck it through. That I give credit for his dad always just allowing him to have to fight through it, and you can't escape it. You got to figure it out, and I think that's why we're seeing just Kingston steadily improve every year, and I think it's even improved throughout the U of A season. I think I wouldn't say a freshman slump. I know the last 2 games he shot like 33% from the field. And I mean, he's at the top of the scouting reports at this point, especially in Big 12 play. But I think I just get credit for like how his upbringing is, how he just kept fighting through. He never just took the easy way out, and I think that just speaks to him going forward, especially when he's in the NBA.
Yeah, I think when it comes
Jamie,
to Kingston,
what's your thought?
it's a very interesting thing that he has, because you see his ability to consistently just put pressure on the paint. I mean, he puts 2 feet in the paint any time that he wants to. I think what we're seeing now is the comfort level of adjusting to what the defense is giving him at that point in time. There has been a little freshman wall that he's hit these last few times. Again, he's at the top of the scouting report now at this point, and people know his tendencies. 25 games, 30 games into the season, people know tendencies. So now, how do you counter that? Is going to be an interesting thing that you see. He's got the physical tools, every bit of 6'3", 6'4", the long arms, the twitch, the athleticism, the pull-up jump shot's been unbelievable this year. Now I'm interested to see what he looks like for the rest of the year, because he hit the peak, as Joe mentioned. Now all of a sudden it's kind of leveling off a little bit, and possibly even, I don't want to say dropping it all, but he's going to have to make adjustments moving forward to see kind of how he counters what they're taking away from him too. And then also that little patch of players there. We talked about Keaton Waggler earlier, but then you also have Nate Ament coming in. You have Braden Berries coming in. And then you have the intrigue that Chris Senack brings as well, his Kingston's teammate. So I think while the top 4 guys that we talked about, and I think Waggler's probably done enough to maybe put himself at number 5, we'll see. But those top 4 guys with Wilson, Peterson, AJ Dybantsa, Cam Boozer, I think that 4 is pretty safe there at the top 4. But that 5 through 10 range, and then seeing, the conversations around the Michael Brown and Darius Acuff, but I think that 5 through 10 range is starting to get very interesting to see how these guys finish the season out. Can they go on a run? You remember a few years ago, like Kemba Walker, good player, all that type of stuff. And then all of a sudden, he just went on and UConn went on this massive run. All of a sudden, he went out and had an incredible NBA career, got drafted high, and all that type of stuff. I'm not sitting there saying that like Michael Brown or Darius Acuff or Braden Berries needs to have a Kimball Walker type run, but how are they going to close the season when the spotlight's the brightest? The games in February, they matter. People are going to go back and watch this film and all that type of stuff. But if you do that in conference play, if you do that in conference championship, and you do that in NCAA tournament, it just kind of resonates a little bit more. That's where legacies are made and built. So I'm going to be very interested in that 5 to 10 range when it comes to those guys, the Native Mints, the Kingston Flemings, the Wagglers, Braden Berries, Chris Cenax, the Michael Brown, Darius Acuff, how they close the season, what it looks like for them now. Because Darius Acuff, he's been really good these past the last few weeks. Native Mint started off really bad, has been really good over the last couple months. Braden Berries, again, trying to find his spot on the team. Now he's closing games. We saw what he did last night. He's closing games for one of the top teams in the country. There's a lot of really good players that are falling within that range. And Kingston, he's hit a wall. He's found some struggle. Obviously, he's a pro. He's going to break through and find all that. But it's going to be fascinating to see as to what that looks like. What that looks like to close the season out, because Houston has Houston has NCAA tournament championship hopes. For them to win an NCAA tournament, Kingston Flemings is going to have to be very good. I'm fascinated to see when it comes to that storyline for these next 2 months, what it looks like when it comes all of those guys, how they close.
Yeah. And Jamie, to your point about how these players, guys in the top 10, that 5 to 10 range, how they perform in conference play or the NCAA tournament, NBA GMs are watching that to see how they perform in high pressure situations under the bright lights, because that's going to be in a similar situation when you look at the playoffs in the NBA. So they want to see who steps up to the plate and who's ready to go, when it matters most. So I think that's also another reason of the importance towards the end, the performance of the players towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and then what conference play and conference tournament brings, even the NCAA tournament brings, is, again, like I said, you're in the top of the scouting report. So just really adjusting and figuring that as important, because when you're looking at guys from 1 to 10, 5 to 10 range, you're still going to be someone that goes into an NBA team. You're probably going to start. If not, you're going to be like the first one off the bench, but you're part of that like rebuilding process, right? Or, if I'm a team that's kind of fringe playoff team, drafting you is going to be maybe help us not be a lottery team next year. So you're going to be in the higher end of these scouting reports in the league too. So just seeing that in the college, seeing how you adjust, figuring out is going to be important, and could be translatable to the NBA. I mean, there's a lot of things that will change once they get to the league and I have to figure out. But I do think being top of the scouting report and having to adjust when defenses take away what you do best is still very important.
What's kind of wild too, Ani?
Yeah.
All 10 of those guys, 11, 12 of those guys that we just mentioned, they're all domestic freshmen.
Yeah.
No foreign guys coming in. There's no upperclassmen or whatever the case. And everybody right now is coming through talking about possibly as a top 10 pick. They're all freshmen.
Yeah, I think that just goes back to the point of this whole like development, American basketball, all of that. Listen, we're good here. I mean, it's not perfect. Listen, and we're not going to have a long conversation with that. It's not perfect, but it's still good. And I would just say that some of the people that have complained about the system flourish within the system as well. That same system. So at the end of the day, we're good. We, like you said, Jamie, from 1 to 10, 12 are people that have developed here domestically. But yeah, Acuff's been fantastic. I mean, don't want to take anything away from him. He's been great. He's someone that's in that 5 to 10 range. Some people are even want to rank him higher, and I understand. Like he almost had 50 against Alabama. Very fantastic play with the ball in his hands. But there's guys in that conversation, and like to Jamie's point, this next month is going to be very important. Like someone's going to come out of nowhere, or someone's going to be, maybe we have 8 to 10 or maybe 11 to 12 that may zip right into that top 5. Joe, any closing thoughts?
No, I'm just really excited to see as the regular season ends and as we enter conference play, just how these top freshmen, because it feels like almost all we're talking about is exclusively freshmen for the most part. I'm just excited to see how they perform, like I said, under those bright lights, and who can who can move up. And it's interesting. You don't want to see players' stock decline, but there will be some of that too. To a certain degree. As we round out these tournaments.
Yeah, Jamie.
Yeah, no, I think I kind of hit on everything. It's going to be fun to watch how those tiers, as I said, AJ kind of in a tier zone at the 1, but I'm going to be interested to see if anybody's able to put pressure on him, and then kind of how 2 through 4 falls, and then who moves into that 5 to 10, 5 to 12 range as well, who kind of solidifies their name and does all that. I think there's a ton of storylines that you can lean into, and that's the beautiful part about the game this year. And I think that's why the ratings are up so high right now in college basketball, is because there's so much parity. Not only is there so much talent, there's so much parity in the game right now. You're seeing a lot of guys any given night. You're turning on a TV and seeing a 40-point performance from somebody who's going to potentially be an NBA draft pick every single night. And then you have the major matchups that you're having of whomever it is and whatever team it is. The Big 12 is incredibly strong. The ACC, the SEC, the Big 10 play is just a bloodbath every night. There's just so many good matchups, so many good games. And I think that's a major reason as to why the ratings are up so high, which is awesome for us too. Fans are involved. Everybody that's watching has opinions and stuff, and that makes for great discourse when it comes to not only these type of conversations, but people interacting with the content that we put out. When we put out a podcast and people commenting their opinions on it, or we put out a list or an article online and people commenting their opinions on it, being able to go back and forth and kind of get the whole interaction. It's just awesome. I think college basketball right now is in such a great spot, and I think it's only possibly going to be able to grow even more. So that's going to be I'm just excited. I got my Final Four credentials the other day. Pretty excited. I'm already talking. Joe and I are having conversations about where we're going and what we're doing and all this type of stuff as well. And USA basketball is at the same time, Chipotle Nationals at the same time, and all that. So it's just an exciting time for college basketball. And the best sport, I will say, the best sport on the planet. I know football drives everything, but for me, college basketball, there was just absolutely, unequivocally nothing like college basketball.
Yeah, no, very well said. Guys, let's end the episode. Again, I want to thank everyone that watches through the end, even if you have something negative to say about us or positive. We just love that you're listening to us and you come on every episode. So appreciate you guys. We'll see you at the next episode. Peace.